Welcome to the Larry Kreider's Leadership Podcast. Larry is the author of over 40 books, the founder of Dove International, a worldwide family of churches and ministries in 6 continents, and has over 50 years of leadership experience. He and his guests will share inspirational leadership insights from their journey with God. These insights, gleaned from serving leaders in many nations, will transform your life and leadership. For more information on Larry's books and resources, visit LarryKreider.com.
Welcome to the Larry Kreider Leadership Podcast, where we learn these small changes we can make that make a massive difference in our lives, and the lives of others, and where we hear the stories behind the stories. With me in the studio today, again for the 3rd time, we have Charles and Ann Stock, Life Center, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Thanks, guys, for hanging in with me. You had so much you carry that the body of Christ needs to hear, and I'm so grateful for you giving your time to do this. So, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. It's great being with you again.
It is really, really, really fun.
We can
go ahead.
Become a habit.
This is becoming a good habit, I think. And I'm going to start with you today. If there's something that you wish you could have known when you started that you didn't know, what would that be?
Now, I'm going to be addressing moms, and
Yes.
this is moms of children and spiritual children.
Okay.
I felt like when I went through big battles and our lives fell apart, that our children were being destroyed during the crisis. And what I found out long term, but it actually took 20 years to find and discover, that they each at different times came to me and said, we weren't destroyed in the crisis. What we really found out was that you could go all the way down to 0, and that God would could bring you back up again. And I had noticed that they both had huge crises in their life. Of course, all people do, and they were able to get back up on their feet really fast, and they attributed it to seeing what they saw when our transition from California to Pennsylvania was such a crisis to them. They were 10 and 13. Mm-hmm. So they were beyond their peers because they had actually, I thought I was destroying them, but really I was equipping them for something bigger.
Someone on the podcast today needed to hear that. Thank you. That was so good. That's beautiful. I want to dig into something that you have learned and you've applied at Life Center. Yeah. That's, other churches throughout the nation of the world are learning from you. And you call it building culture. How do you build the kind of culture you need to build in your local church that provides a place for growth and blessing? And talk about that. As long as it takes. We want to hear this.
And certainly, I want to give a disclaimer here that I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all answer to this. I only have my story because in all our years, whenever we tried to adapt a program that somebody else was having great success with, it was just Saul's armor. It never worked for us. So we gave up on it. Yeah. And it actually became a good answer when people would come and say, hey, why doesn't this church do this? And we would just say, we tried it so many times. We're bad at it. We're just doing what we can do.
Staying in our lane.
And the culture, I think we discovered that our growth came out of cultivating a culture. That wasn't a conscious decision. It was just that our first priority was, one, we knew God was with us. So that was the center. And we also knew, and this might have been almost selfish or hedonistic, that I need the presence of God in order to function. And so
that's just wise.
Seeking the presence of God was more important to me than church growth or anything like that. And so we never deliberately pursued church growth, economic growth, organizational growth. None of those were our goals. They were byproducts of seeking the Lord. That the Lord's presence kept us happy. And I think the joy and the love that brought people, because they were attracted to that.
True.
And so along the way, in his presence is fullness of joy. So joy became a marker of our culture. And along the way, in that joy, we learned some wisdom, learned the rails. And so I would say that just as a leader, because being unqualified or feeling unqualified, I knew I needed to learn leadership. So early on, and I'll just talk about the Pennsylvania experience, because we've been here almost as long as we lived in California. So, you know,
35 years this week.
Yeah, we feel, I'd say in our roots, week. I know there's the California thing on us, but we feel like Pennsylvanians in our identity much more than we, you know, when we first moved here, we felt like displaced Californians. Now we're Pennsylvanians. We love Lancaster County is
awesome.
Is a cultural fountainhead for the United States.
It is.
You know, 40% of all Americans have at least one ancestor from Lancaster County.
Really?
Yeah, there was a study done at Millersville University. Matt Buckwalter sent me the study, and I said, "This is stunning. They're so rich here, rich soil, rich foundation." Anyway. But so we're back. We're in Pennsylvania. I don't know how to lead, so I studied, you know, and we would periodically bring in consultants. Some of them were prophets that came, you know, and fathers that we would invite, like Dick Mills or Alan Vincent in those years. And they gave us a lot of wisdom and help. And I read all the current, you know, business success books just because I thought I might learn something there. And it gave me something to do. But and so that was important, to be teachable, be open, because that what you do, other people are going to do.
Correct.
And then we also took leaps of faith. You know, there were these crazy leaps of faith. But along the way, we all get pruned, you know, and so there's different kinds of pruning that shape what we are. If we use the analogy like we're an orchard or we're fruit trees, but all together we're an orchard, we're going to be pruned. God will prune us. You know, if we're fruitful, He'll prune us, and He prunes us for fruitfulness. So some of the things, and these all contribute, the way we go through the pruning contributes to the deposit of culture that you're building, no matter how dysfunctional everybody is, because we got thrown into this very toxic and very different culture, and just by being ourselves, going through all the suffering and the stuff with joy, it, you know, some people left, but the people who stayed and the people who came, you know, we could say after, like, we turned the corner after 3 to 5 years, and by 7 years, we were completely different. We changed the name of the church, and we had a real different ID there. But so we have to trust the Vinedresser, no matter what we're going through. If you're a leader and it's not looking good, be encouraged, you know, because God's at work. He's with you no matter what it looks like. Then, you know, for us, financial crunches were a big part of the story that was told. And even when we moved to this property, which for us was a miracle, and at one point we realized we hadn't gotten a big enough loan to make the right remodeling stuff, so we had to go back to the bank and say, we need more money. And to do that, like all of our core leaders that were, well, there were 6 families, we all had to co-sign because they said, well, we just need more equity, which was crazy. But we did it. We all signed away our homes, and they weren't in grave danger. You know, it'd be first they would have they would have been steps, but we were all there. So this actually becomes a story that's part of the culture, because while we did it, we just felt like it was our faith. Other people hear it and they're encouraged, or they're somehow, they go like, wow, this is real here. You know, you guys really believe God. You really have put your lives on the line in a way that most people can relate to. And so, you know, a lot of the pruning, we sort scaffolding from what the structure is that God's actually building, you know, because a lot of times when we start something, we've got these people around us that we figure will be with us forever, and it doesn't work out that way. But there are the ones, and you have a great team. Many of you have been together more than 30 years. And we have that same core, and it builds something where no matter what comes and goes, the identity, you know, kind of the DNA of the calling on your lives corporately becomes really clear.
It's good.
And the clearer it is, the healthier it is. You know, like it doesn't there's not all these, like, nobody knows what's going on.
Right.
And so, you know, so we have all these experiences in our story with our fruitfulness, and yet we'd have to say, you know, we've been there almost 35 years, that there would be seasons where it would be stagnant, it would plateau. And I like change that is for the better. You know? Are you agreeing?
No, that's
Okay.
good.
Do you like change?
Oh, I would like it to stay the same.
Okay.
So yeah,
That's our balance. That's where we're good together.
I'm the change, and
My wife and I would be the same.
yeah, and so but I get antsy if it's plateaued, if it's like, you know. So we would fast, we would pray, but probably on an average of every 3 to 5 years, we would bring in outside consultants, you know, like organizational consultants. Sometimes they were very prophetic. Sometimes they were very kind of just corporate and stuff. And to tell the truth, looking back, many of them were they weren't worth the money that we invested in terms of tangible fruit.
I told you so.
But we, you know, they were like exercises in self-awareness, and usually we thought, okay, we just spent, you know, $2,000, $10,000, whatever it was, to find out what we already knew.
Right.
But at least now we know that what we thought we knew is verified by data or something. But those things actually, they weren't bad things, because almost they were like putting your money where your mouth is. We're praying, God, show us show us how to get to what you've called us to. And it wasn't like we're trying to get to be bigger or better. We're trying to complete the mission. You know, we're trying.
Right.
So you actually become self-aware through doing that. But the last time we did this, I have to say this. What I call this is we're pruning for structure. You know, like different kinds of wine, the grapevines are pruned different ways.
Correct.
And different fruit trees are pruned different ways, and they impact the quality of the fruit, the kind of fruit, the content, you know, all this stuff. So this is, you know, part of what, there's the pruning that God does that we don't choose, you know. He's the husbandman. But as leaders, there's the pruning we do on our orchard. You know, this is 1 Corinthians. We're God's building, we're his field, you know, and so we're his agricultural project. And so I would say when we articulate for pruning, what we're doing is we're articulating what we do, how we do it, why we do it, and where we want to go. You know, like I would say that's from all the different consultants that we consulted with, that would be the common denominator. But I have to say, the last one we did, which was, it's about 4 years now, we hadn't done one for about 5 years. So I say to the core team, like, guys, we need some analysis and some help at seeing where we are and what our blind spots are, where, like, there's things that aren't working. And so actually the first couple times I pitched it, there was kind of a groan like, oh, are we going to do that again? But it was one of those things which, I guess this is part of your calling when you're the senior guy, is that a lot of times the things that are bothering you, it's actually God is talking. You know, so we did it, and this last one we did it, and it was interesting because the consultation company was owned by people in our church. And the primary people that were going to work with us were people we knew really well. And you might think that would not be good, but these were all people everybody liked. And they said, actually, one was married to one of our pastors, been, you know, like one of our real pastoral guys, and she'd been beloved. She had worked as like a receptionist or administrative assistant at one time, very successful in this field of corporate consulting. So they did this, and they used the Strength Finders model. And we had done the flipping thing where you find out what's wrong with you and you try to get rid of all your baggage and then you're going to fly higher. But for us, and we had a guy who was doing that in consulting as well, but this worked so well for us. It blew our minds.
You found your strengths.
We're still bearing fruit from this, and it gave us tools that we can quickly enculturate like new leaders. Because, I mean, one of the problems is if people, come to the Lord in your ministry, they grow up in your ministry, you're all they know.
Right.
But if you get transfer growth, and our culture is so mobile, people get moved from place to place, to place. And so recognizing that a lot of our growth has been transfer growth through the years, which wouldn't be my first choice, but God's
you take where
in
God
charge.
Gives you.
Yeah. And so this, now people love it, but if you put them in a place where they're going to be influencing people, they become a home group leader, they become a leader of a ministry team, or because we have lots of projects, we're very active out in the community and stuff.
Right.
If they don't have our DNA, we're in trouble.
You are,
because we're not going to be represented well.
Yeah.
And
so it helped us figure out our
so
DNA.
This
helped
was
us figure out our
stunning,
culture.
and the process was with this particular group, they did like a reverse engineering, and so we just we got 12 people together, I think, and we met I don't know how many times, but we would tell our stories. And then we would sort of go around the room and let each person tell their things, like what they think are really important.
Right.
And we began to fill out like big storyboards of all these possibilities and way too many words, that like if you were going to put it in a nutshell, what word would you use? And all these techniques and things. But it was actually like, it was like playing in our key or something that we're feeling fruitful about it. But then we went through a distillation.
Around here we ...
Yeah,
around 12 around years.
Yeah, we distilled our values and what we're actually doing down to like an elevator pitch. So we would do these exercises where you've got the microphone, you've got 45 seconds, what's going on at Life Center?
Right.
And we could do this, and we trained our staff to do this, and it was a lot of amazing fun. And it took time, and we had to keep paring it down, saying it with less words. We had to pick 3. I mean, this was the challenge. Pick 3 things, like how, like, okay, this is what we do. We're pretty sure of our goal, what we're doing, but we're not sure how we're doing it. We got it down to 3 words. We do it with joy, we do it with generosity, we do it with honor, and so we swallowed up excellence in honor, we swallowed up, there are all these things. We just made it so brief, and so it was a tremendous discovery experience for all of us, and kind of got us all back on the same page. And as we shared it, we'd share it with we do this thing where we have about 50 or 60 employees. It's a big operation. We're doing lots of things, lots of outreach, lots of projects. But we do this thing where, like, sometimes we do it once a month, sometimes we do it minimum once a quarter. We have our entire staff down to part-time, people that are just interns and stuff, and we'll spend a few hours and usually a meal together with stories and exercises that reinforce these things. But when we began to communicate these things to our staff, I could say the joy level went up. The people, they got it. It wasn't foreign to them, like we were trying to say, this is our new company logo, our new company culture. But we were actually just describing the culture that we had already... Putting words to what we had been doing for 30 years. They all start with around here, we. Okay. And the challenge was to get 12. But before we got to that part, we got it down to what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're doing it, and where we're going. It was this quadrant thing that a lot of vision, mission, all that stuff. And but we got that to be clear, and we created this little accordion booklet. I don't know if I have any of these with me today that we gave to all our employees and we give to new leaders who come in. But the thing that really makes it work is what Ann's talking about, is these around here statements, because it's like it distilled behavioral standards.
Sure.
Sort of like your kids, they know they're your kids. Like, I mean, there are times, when, especially in certain years, where you think, are they really our kids? But like, people know a family and they spot the kids, like, oh man, look at those kids. You know which family they're from.
Right.
These simple statements we were clarifying the culture by this. And when we communicate this to the new people who come in, who go to work for us, not the ones who are just visiting, but the ones who are like, we want to get involved. We want to, what can we do in this ministry? Can we lead a small group? Can we be a part? These things, because not only are these they're easy to comprehend, but they're also, you can be accountable for them. That people can behave themselves out of you know what, you can't behave that way here. so I'm speaking to leaders. Every family has a slightly different DNA and different values. Yeah. When we clarified our statement, it worked like this. Mission, what is happening at Life Center? This is the what we're doing. We're experiencing the love of God and giving it away. Core values. How are we doing this? With joy, honor, and generosity.
Love it.
Purpose. Why are we doing this? Well, we're awakening hearts to hope. That was, and we chose non-Christianese language because we thought, if someone wants to know who's not been church, they can understand this language. Like, we want people, hope is the expectation that things will get better.
That's right.
And then vision, where's all this going? This is the goal you can never reach. All creation set free by love.
Amen.
Romans 8.
Yeah.
Okay. So now these clarifying statements, we'll do usually exercises with these in small groups in these our all staff meetings, and they're always funny. I don't know. They're almost always, everybody's laughing and they want to share at the end. But the first one is we believe in miracles. And then we have little sub things that unpack it, like it's in our history, on and on. Right. 2, we honor the Holy Spirit's direction. 3, we find solutions through prayer. Mm-hmm. So these all sound very spiritual, but 4, we speak a language of hope. Mm-hmm. And so this detoxifies your culture. Sure. Because you're holding, look, if you're in a place of leadership or responsibility, your language must be the language of hope. He's the God of hope. Good. We'll go back to number 3. We're going to find solutions through prayer. Right. Okay. Number 5, choose joy, because joy is the indicator of the presence of God. Exactly. And so this is my own biggest struggle, especially as I age, because I have less happy days now. Everybody has a joy set level that's part of their temperament. Mine, all my life was pretty high, but the last few years I understand that I need the Lord to fill me continually. Number 6, we work from rest.
Yeah, I love that.
Number 7, we give ourselves generously. So we're not just measuring ourselves out when we get requests. Now, obviously, when you do any project, every leader has to budget manpower, time, resources, or you'll start to build a tower that you can't complete. But once we know what God has called us to, or something that's simple, that's not a big project, we give ourselves generously. Yeah. It's what happens. So, some of this, just a funny story. When we first moved to our new building on 40th Street, and we were living kind of in a miracle and in an impossible situation. We didn't have any, we had to build, and we had no, we just barely got there. How can we build, but 3 years later we did. But I would say this thing publicly to the group. I said, well, around here, the default answer is yes. And that initially was an invitation for a lot of people to get involved. But eventually, I had to edit that statement because when your default answer is yes, you get a lot of weird stuff going on all around you over time. But so we give ourselves generously. That's as close as we get to that the default answer is yes. 8, we pursue excellence. And so
very good.
It's a funny thing that I don't think we ever pursued excellence because, we were trying to be excellent. Some people might have been. I was pursuing excellence because I get bugged by sloppy things. Like, I would sit in services and critique and like, why are we doing it this way? And I mean, that would just be my own internal experience. Like,
and remember, God is excellence.
Yes. And so, but not just, it wasn't just like being in a celebration service.
Right.
But it was also how we did things.
Sure.
And it was somewhat subconscious. We didn't even realize it. But like the bank would talk to us, or businesses would talk to us, and they go, oh, we'll do anything with you guys. Because you always keep your word, pay on time, blah, blah, blah. And it wasn't anything we were trying to do, but it's just like we were trying to represent the Lord. And we didn't want to be jerks. So, number 9. Take responsibility and show initiative.
Right.
So this was very important, especially like in our generation. I'm a baby boomer, in my early 70s. It was more part of our training. But we have so many young employees, many of them, they weren't parented well, many from broken home situations. And there's this whole thing of not being a spectator, not saying, well, I don't know why they don't do it. One of John Leach's statements that he said, when you say they is us, just point at yourself and say, they aren't taking care of this. So we take responsibility. And then, very important, especially people come into what looks like a big organization, people have been around for a long time, take initiative.
Yep.
Like we give our new people, like, got any good ideas?
Yeah.
You see something we can't see, and so, and they can take initiative for pretty much anything that they'll take responsibility for.
Exactly.
So it's like, as long as they're not delegating it to us like you guys should, it's more like, hey, maybe I could find a solution to this. So number 10 is communicate with purpose.
Good.
11 is we're better together. That's the team part. And then the one Anne referenced when she is we value the past, but we reach for the future.
Love that. That is so good, because building a proper culture is so important. All if we have a culture, we just don't know how to explain it. And building culture is such a powerful thing. You could go for hours and hours on that, but you gave us just the snapshot of what that looks like, and it's powerful. Every church, every ministry needs to understand that. How do you build a proper culture, godly culture? And you guys have done it so well. Thank you. Wow. We're out of time. So glad you guys can be with us for the 3rd time today. Thank you for hanging in there with us.
Thank you.
And we're looking forward to many people being helped throughout the world because of what you guys have shared here today. So for all of our listeners, again, check out the show notes. Information about any of these resources are available for you on the show notes. And we'll see you back here more next week as we hear some more stories behind the stories of what God is doing in leadership all over the body of Christ. God bless you, and see you next week.
Thank you for listening to Larry Kreider's Leadership Podcast. If you want more information about any of Larry's books, daily devotionals, small group resources, or any other teachings, go to larrykreider.com.